The truth is, you'll never be seen as a luxury if you don't master the art of silence. Not forced silence, but powerful, intentional silence. The kind that shifts the energy in the room when you walk in without saying a single word. It's not about withholding your voice. It's about refusing to waste your energy on anything or anyone that doesn't deserve it. In today's America, everyone's talking, shouting, posting, reacting, proving themselves. But not you. You're learning to stay silent when someone tries to provoke you. You don't respond immediately just because you should. You've realized that power isn't always in reacting sometimes. Not reacting is the highest form of power. You enter the room. The lights don't change, but the energy does. Suddenly, people adjust their tone, lower their voice. Your silence makes them uncomfortable but curious. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder, a secret order." And sometimes, that secret order is silence. You remember the pressure to explain yourself, to smile, to share. But then you realized your absence speaks louder than your presence. People don't hear you anymore, they notice you. You see, silence isn't emptiness. It's a statement. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this message travels. Now let's calm down and begin our journey of listening and healing together today. That you recall those online debates that left you drained, arguments with people who never really wanted to understand. Then one day you said nothing. Not because you lost, but because you realized you had nothing to prove. Modern psychology shows that in group settings, the quietest person is often perceived as the most powerful. Why? Because silence creates a vacuum and human nature fills that vacuum with assumptions. When you speak less, people think more of you. They assume you're deep, composed, observing, calculating, and sometimes their imagination gives you more value than reality ever could. Here's a little-known truth. The human brain automatically assigns higher value to things it doesn't fully understand. The less you reveal, the more they believe you have. Ever notice how people who talk too much start to sound cheap, like an ad that plays every hour? But the quiet ones? They're like a rare song that plays once, and you never forget it. If you've ever paid attention, the truly powerful people, CEOs, therapists, elite artists, wise elders, they all share something in common. They don't talk much. They wait. They listen. They only speak when necessary. And when they do, the whole room stops. There's even a psychological phenomenon called the pause effect, a communication technique used by leaders, where they intentionally pause in silence between sentences. It increases the impact of what they say next. People lean in. Subconsciously, they trust the message more. Experts still debate whether silence makes you appear more intelligent, or if intelligent people naturally stay quiet. Either way, silence at the right moment is a hallmark of elegance and power. I get it, in a world that's always on, silence feels like rebellion. But you didn't come here to blend in. You came to set a new standard. A standard where you don't owe anyone an immediate response. Where you don't chase validation. Where peace is your default, not drama. And you've started to notice it works. The texts come back days later. The ones who ghosted you return, realizing your absence wasn't empty, it was powerful. Not because you played games, but because you chose stillness over noise. So next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, don't. Just pause. Let your silence speak for you. Trust me, sometimes a calm stare is sharper than 1,000 words. Because you're not someone desperate to be understood anymore. You're the one people can't stop trying to understand. You're the silence that grabs the world's attention. Scarcity makes you priceless. You used to think that being available made you lovable. That replying quickly meant you cared. That always saying yes made you valuable. But now you know, luxury isn't accessible. And neither are you. It hits you one day, right in the middle of your usual routine. Someone texts. You pause. Not out of pride, but out of clarity. You're not rushing to reply anymore. Not because you're playing games, but because you finally understand that your time, your energy, and your presence are limited edition. You start to realize what Carl Jung hinted at when he spoke about the unconscious forces that drive relationships. He believed that people are magnetically drawn to what they can't fully grasp. And nothing is more magnetic than someone who's present, then gone. Someone whose presence feels like a season, not a subscription. You don't make yourself scarce to manipulate, no. You do it because you now understand. When you're always there, you become furniture. Predictable. Background noise. But when you're selective, intentional, when you're not always reachable, people begin to realize how valuable you really are. Here's something strange you've probably never heard. The Zeigarnik effect. It's a psychological phenomenon where people remember unfinished experiences more vividly than completed ones. Meaning, if they don't get full access to you, their brain keeps playing loops. They keep thinking about you, wondering, reaching. And you're no longer someone they can pin down with a text or a favor. You're that one conversation that ended just before the climax. The laugh that lingered. The glance that suggested more. You're the cliffhanger in a world full of spoilers. You're not ghosting people. You're glowing up in silence. It might feel weird at first. You're used to people pleasing. You worry that they'll think you're arrogant or aloof. But let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a diamond begging to be found? No, it sits beneath the earth, quiet, hidden, priceless. Begin to limit your access like a velvet rope outside a luxury club. Not everyone gets in, and those who do, they remember. They behave better. They speak more carefully. Because now, your energy isn't free. It costs presence. It costs effort. It costs respect. It's the same way luxury brands operate. They don't put everything on display. There's always a members-only level, a by-invitation-only event. And what does that do? It makes people crave it more. Because humans don't chase what's easy. We chase what's earned. Studies even show that emotional availability triggers a reward system in the brain. But here's the kicker. Intermittent availability. Sometimes you're there. Sometimes you're not. Spikes the reward value. It creates anticipation, which amplifies attraction. That's not manipulation. It's neuroscience. And here's the kicker most people miss. When you're always available, you train people to see you as someone who has nothing better to do. But when you're scarce, even your yes sounds expensive. Even your hello feels important. Still, the experts are split. Some argue constant contact builds trust. Others insist that space builds respect. But your experience tells you what science is just now catching up to. Not everyone deserves full access to you. And suddenly, you're okay with leaving texts on read. With skipping the party. With not explaining your absence. Because luxury Doesn't apologize for being rare. It just is. And slowly, people start treating you differently. They ask before they call. They wonder what you're up to. They notice your absence like an empty chair at a full table. Because now you've become the highlight, not the default. So next time you feel guilty for stepping back, remember this. People don't chase what's always there. They chase what they're afraid to lose. You're not being distant. You're becoming deliberate. You're not cold. You're just expensive. Energy that commands respect. You never had to raise your voice. You just had to walk into the room. Like you belong there. Like your presence alone was the statement. And slowly, they notice they always do. Because your energy changed before your words ever could. Remember that day you didn't say much. Maybe you barely spoke. Maybe your face didn't even smile. But people paused. Their tone shifted. They gave you space. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Because something about your posture said, I don't need to prove myself here. This is the part where Carl Jung's wisdom kicks in deeper. He taught that we all carry unconscious energy that others respond to before we say a word. You walk into a space, and your very being communicates something primal. It's not just about your clothes, your looks, or your words. It's your inner posture, your emotional spine, that tells people how to treat you. You stand straighter now. Not stiff, not defensive, just aligned. Your shoulders roll back. Your breathing slows. You don't shrink to make others comfortable. And guess what? That subtle shift in energy changes everything. Suddenly, people stop interrupting you. They lean in. They wait. Because without even trying, you've become the calm in their chaos. There's a science to this. It's called embodied cognition. The idea that your body doesn't just express how you feel, it creates how you feel. When you move with calmness, your brain registers confidence. When your gaze is steady, your voice naturally softens, and others mirror that calm. You're literally training the world to treat you like someone who matters. But here's the wild part. The less you demand respect, the more you command it. People sense when someone isn't seeking approval. It's like a dog that doesn't chase, it suddenly becomes interesting. People are hardwired to detect desperation and to run from it. But they're also wired to recognize certainty. And nothing is louder than quiet confidence. Ever heard of low arousal dominance? It's a psychological trait where someone radiates strength through stillness. Unlike loud, aggressive types, this kind of dominance doesn't need noise. It doesn't crave validation. It just is. Think of Morgan Freeman narrating your silence. That's the vibe. You walk like you don't need the room, but the room needs you. You listen more. You speak less. And when you do speak, you don't rush. Every pause becomes a comma in the sentence of power. You've become the human version of that rare watch that doesn't tick loudly but still turns heads. There's even research to back it up. Individuals who exhibit calm, measured energy are perceived as more intelligent, trustworthy, and attractive. Why? Because in a loud world, the one who doesn't compete for attention becomes unforgettable. But not everyone gets it. Some might say, you've changed. Some might try to test you, poke at your peace to see if it's real. And in those moments, your only job is to remain unshaken. Let them wrestle with their own noise. You've already outgrown the need to respond. Experts still debate. Does this confidence come first? Or does the behavior create the feeling? But in your case, it doesn't matter anymore. You've chosen to embody the version of yourself that moves like luxury, You are not on sale. You are not available in bulk. You're rare. And people treat you how you treat yourself. So now, you don't walk into a room seeking recognition. You are the recognition. You're not chasing presence. You are the presence. Even in silence you're loud. Even in stillness, you shake the air. Not because you're trying to be intimidating, but because you finally know who you are. And when you know who you are, they know it too. Boundaries are the new elegance. There was a time when you let everything slide. When you laughed off disrespect. When you gave second, third, fourth chances just to keep the peace. But peace without self-respect? That's not elegance. That's exhaustion in a fancy dress. Now, you've evolved. You're no longer afraid to say no. You don't explain your boundaries like an apology. You set them like art, with grace, with firmness, with no need for permission. Carl Jung believed that the outer world reflects the inner self. So when you stop letting people overstep your boundaries, it's not just about them. It's about what you finally believe you deserve. You're showing the world what your soul has started to accept. You are not a convenience. You are not a shortcut. You are not an option. You've learned that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're gates to show who gets in and how. You don't have to be rude. You just have to be clear. And clarity is classy. Imagine this. Someone disrespects your time. Shows up late. You smile gently and say, "Let's reschedule when you're ready," to honor the time we both agreed on. You don't yell, you don't chase. You elevate the standard. That's what luxury does. It doesn't lower itself. It invites others to rise. Psychologists call this assertive communication, the ability to express your needs clearly, without aggression. Studies show that people who set and maintain boundaries are happier, more respected, and emotionally healthier. Yet so many avoid it out of fear of rejection, of seeming mean, of losing love. But now you understand, if love only exists where there are no boundaries, it's not love, it's dependency. And dependency is not elegance. It's imbalance. There's a strange truth you've discovered. When you start enforcing boundaries, you lose some people. But you never lose the right ones. The ones who leave? They were only comfortable when they had access without responsibility. But the ones who stay, they evolve with you. They don't just respect your limits, they admire them. And here's the kicker: luxury always has limits. The velvet rope, the private list, the by appointment only sign. Why? Because limitation breeds desire. The less you allow, the more they value what's allowed. Experts still debate the psychology of boundaries, whether they should be flexible or firm, situational or universal. But one thing is clear: boundaries teach people how to treat you. And you've started teaching with elegance. You stop explaining your no's. You stop overcompensating. You stop trying to be nice at the cost of being real. Because you've realized something simple, yet radical. You don't owe access to everyone who wants it. Your time, your love, your energy, they're investments, not giveaways. Think of yourself like a luxury item in a glass case. People can look, admire, desire, but unless they've earned it, they don't touch. And if they try to grab it without asking, the alarm sounds. Not because you're cruel, but because you're valuable, and you don't prove value with price tags. You prove it with boundaries. So the next time someone says, "You've changed," you smile and say, "Yes, I upgraded." Because you're not trying to be everything to everyone anymore. You're just being true to yourself. And in a world that expects you to be constantly available, Nothing is more luxurious than saying, I am not. Your mystery is magnetic. Once upon a time, you laid it all out. You overshared. You overexplained. You thought that being open meant being understood. But the more you gave, the more they took and the less they saw you. Now, you leave space. You speak less. You smile instead of explaining. And you've discovered a hidden truth that Carl Jung understood deeply. Mystery creates magnetism. Because people aren't attracted to what they understand. They're drawn to what they can't quite name. You've become that. Not a puzzle, not a game, but a person who no longer feels the need to overperform emotionally. You let others wonder what you're thinking. You let your silence stretch a little longer. You don't share every detail of your past, your trauma, your victories. You're not a reality show. You're a limited screening. Science backs this up too. There's something called the information gap theory. It's a principle in psychology where curiosity is triggered not by full information, but by missing pieces. When someone knows just enough about you to be intrigued, but not enough to feel finished, they lean in. They imagine. They crave more, and what they imagine, it often elevates you beyond what you could have explained anyway. You're no longer afraid to be misunderstood. You're not here to perform clarity. You're here to hold your shape. And that means keeping some parts of yourself for you. You've stopped announcing your plans. You've stopped explaining your silence. You've stopped handing out access passes to your inner world like flyers. Now, people have to earn the right to know you. And ironically, that makes them want it more. They say, you're so mysterious. You say nothing. They wonder if you're seeing someone. You smile and sip your coffee. They ask what you've been up to. You reply, just living. Not vague. Not evasive. Just centered. Because what's truly luxurious isn't what's loud and visible. It's what you sense but can't quite grab. Like the faintest perfume in an elevator, you don't know who it came from, but you'll be thinking about it all day. Experts often argue about vulnerability, how much is too much, when to open up. And yes, real connection requires honesty. But you've learned something wiser. True intimacy isn't overexposure, it's selective sharing. You don't owe your story to strangers. You don't owe your heart to everyone who asks. You give with discernment. You've become the kind of person whose presence lingers long after they leave. The one they replay conversations with. The one they describe as different, but can't explain why. And you know what? That's power. You are no longer addicted to being understood. You are devoted to being authentic. And that authenticity includes mystery. So next time someone asks, what are you thinking? You don't have to answer. Let them wonder. Let them try to solve you. Let them feel the thrill of not knowing. Because in a world where everyone overshares, you've become the rare one, the luxury version, the one who's not easy to read. Not easy to reach, but impossible to forget. And now, we exhale. You've traveled through 5 layers of unlearning. You've peeled away the habits that made you too accessible, too loud, too eager. And what's left is someone who knows their value so deeply, they don't need to explain it. You walk a little slower now, not because you're tired, but because you're intentional. You speak less, not because you're hiding, but because you're sure. You've stopped offering yourself like a discount product on clearance racks. You're not rushing. You're resonating. Let the world wonder. Let them crave your presence. Let them adjust to the new version of you, a version that doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't shrink, the version that waits, that protects. It's energy that gives with care and walks away with grace. This journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world convinced you to perform. You were always the luxury. You just forgot. So breathe. There's nothing more to prove. There's nothing more to chase. Just a life to live. Quietly, powerfully, beautifully on your own terms, because you've seen the shift. And now, so will they. End of scenario. Congratulations, if you have recognized your past mistakes and begun to heal.